It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. President Park Geun-hye begins a three-nation tour to Africa with a stop in Ethiopia, where she will meet with her Ethiopian counterpart, President Mulata Teshome, and the country's prime minister. One standout project during President Park's Africa tour, Korea-Aid, an official development and aid initiative offering food, medical care, and even Korean cultural content. The Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity is currently underway, with UN Secretary-General KiMoon emphasizing the importance of North Korea ceasing provocations and returning to dialogue. The UN chief is also expected to attend the G7 summit in Iseshima, Japan. President Park Geun-hye is in Ethiopia, the first stop of her three-nation Africa trip. She will hold summit talks with Ethiopia's prime minister and the president, with the goal of enhancing economic ties and cooperation in various fields. For more, let's turn to our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun, who is on the line from Addis Ababa. Ji-sun, what can we expect from tonight's summit?
Good evening, Daniel. President Park was greeted by Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn upon landing at the airport on Wednesday. Soon she will sit down for summit talks, and later this evening will attend a state banquet at the presidential palace. During their talks, the two leaders are expected to seal dozens of deals in order to enhance economic cooperation in multiple fields. Among the agreements is a planned textile complex covering 100 hectares or 1 square kilometer. The project is expected to give Korean investors a competitive edge in production costs.
Ethiopia has a strong textile industry, with production costs that are about 30% lower than in China. Korea's entry into the Ethiopian market will enable us to send exports to the U.S. and the EU without tariffs.
Seoul will also take a greater role in Ethiopian infrastructure projects in transportation, power generation, and urban development. Korea will also offer its knowledge in high value-added sectors like science and technology, energy, e-government, and customs. Another highlight of the President's state visit is the launch of Korea-Aid, a new official development aid program offering food, health, and cultural services on wheels.
In our bid to support Africa's ability to achieve its Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, adopted at the UN last year, Seoul will launch Korea-Aid, a comprehensive development project that covers healthcare, food and culture, leaving no area left behind.
President Park will also sit down with Ethiopian President Mulata Teshome, and the two are expected to discuss topics ranging from peacekeeping to defense and climate change. During the talks, Korea and Ethiopia are also expected to share their views on the North Korean nuclear issue, and the outcome could serve as an example for other African countries to implement the UN sanctions on Pyongyang. I'll have more details on those talks when the summits come to an end later tonight. Back to you in Seoul.
All right, thank you for that, Ji-sun. Ahead of her visit to Africa, President Park penned an op-ed for the Ethiopian Herald, where she laid out her vision for bilateral relations between the two countries. Kim Hye-sung has the details.
President Park has pledged to expand Korean businesses' investments in Ethiopia and support the development of local industries. In an OPED for the Ethiopian Herald, the nation's state-run daily, published Wednesday, the president underscored the importance of Korea's relationship with the African nation, writing that, quote, Korea will stand as Ethiopia's reliable partner on its path towards growth and development. She also laid out her vision for strengthening the friendship between the two countries forged during the Korean War and listed her 3 pillars of bilateral cooperation. The first is bolstering support for healthcare and nutrition through the Korea-Aid initiative, which she will launch during her visit. The president also vowed to share Korea's experiences with socio-economic development, which it gained through the Saemal-Undong Rural Development Movement. The last pillar, cultural and people-to-people exchanges, is aimed at deepening understanding between the two countries. During her 3-day state visit, President Park will aim to highlight the 3 pillars through her meetings with Ethiopian leaders and in her speech at the African Union on Friday. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
One objective of the president's visit to Africa is promoting Korea as a development partner by providing economic assistance. To support that goal, she will launch a new program called Korea-Aid. Lee Eun-shin explains what the initiative is all about.
During her visit to Africa this week, President Park is unveiling a new government initiative called Korea-Aid. as part of its official development assistance. Through the program, Korea will provide food, medical care, and cultural content by utilizing specialized vehicles to the 3 African countries the president is visiting on her trip: Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya. The goal of the program is to help area residents become self-reliant and to make the services easily accessible to people in need so that, as the slogan says, no one is left behind. In each country, a mobile health clinic and 2 ambulances will offer checkups, medical supplies, and first aid education. Food trucks will offer traditional Korean dishes and snacks. And for entertainment, a truck equipped with a wide screen will display cultural and educational videos. The program will last until 2017, but the opportunities for exchange are expected to continue well beyond that. The Foreign Ministry is expecting the program to expand economic collaboration and cultural exchange between Korea and the related African countries.
When it comes to international relations, Korea specializes in developing cooperation strategy, which is what the United Nations is also working towards, as well as providing humanitarian efforts.
President Park will launch the program in Ethiopia at a special event on Saturday at Addis Ababa University. Yoon-shin, Arirang News.
Turning to the 11th Jeju Forum, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon was at the opening ceremony. There he gave a strong message to North Korea and expressed his hopes on more cooperation in Asia. Kwon So-won reports from Jeju.
The Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity is currently underway on South Korea's southernmost island of Jeju, and the Korean peninsula is one of the places where peace is needed the most, as the 2 Koreas remain divided, with North Korea's nuclear and missile threats not showing signs of stopping anytime soon. That's why UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon took the opportunity during his keynote speech at the event on Thursday to call on Pyongyang to end its provocations and fulfill its international obligations.
The DPRK's pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles only undermines its own security and hurts its own citizens. Military spending remains high while children are wasting. Human rights are systematically abused. The authorities of the DPRK must correct these wrongs. We must find a path back to dialogue.
Pan also expressed hope for greater cooperation in Asia, calling it a powerful continent that's critical to securing prosperity and security across the globe. He also said he wished that a 7th trilateral summit between South Korea, China, and Japan would be held as soon as possible. In line with this, a group of former prime ministers from Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, New Zealand, and Italy shared their views on Asia's leadership as well as the challenges ahead for South Korea.
Should tensions escalate in the Korean Peninsula or between the US and China, the ROK will be caught in between. How can the ROK avoid such a scenario? And can the ROK be solely dependent on the US security umbrella, important as it is? These are important questions that the ROK leadership, both present and future, will have to think about.
Now, the UN Secretary-General will have to think about whether he wants to become part of that leadership, as rumors of him running for the presidency of South Korea have been filling the air in Jeju. Pan has left the island for the G7 summit in Japan, but many will be fixated on his every move when he's back in Korea over the weekend, searching for clues to his political future. Kwon So-won, Arirang News, Jeju.
Turning to the other event on the UN chief's itinerary, world leaders have gathered in the Iseshima, Japan, for the start of the G7 summit to discuss some of the most pressing matters facing the international community. Over the next 2 days, they will be discussing a range of issues from the global economy, international terrorism, and the refugee crisis to Beijing's claims over islands in the South China Sea. North Korea is also expected to be on the agenda, with a strong warning against Pyongyang's provocations likely to be announced in a statement after the talks. U.S. President Barack Obama already discussed the matter with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday. They agreed to boost their defense capabilities against the regime's threats. The top nuclear envoys from South Korea, the U.S. and Japan will meet in Tokyo next week to discuss the situation on the Korean peninsula. South Korea's Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, KiMoon, will meet Wednesday with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts Sung Kim and Kimihiro Ishikane for the first time since North Korea's Workers' Party Congress earlier this month. Seoul's foreign ministry said the three will discuss progress on the implementation of the latest UN sanctions on the regime. The day after their meeting, June 2nd, will be the 90th day since the UN sanctions were adopted to punish the North for its nuclear and missile provocations earlier this year. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is in Korea with a packed schedule, of course, taking him to various international events. Remarks about his future and the division in Korean society have led many to speculate he might be hinting at a run for Korea's top political job. Shin Se-min zooms in on how the UN chief's homecoming is, in some sense, sending shockwaves through the domestic political scene.
Neither confirming nor denying. Visiting UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has been playing his cards close to his chest as speculation swirls he might launch a bid for the Korean presidency next year. His ambiguous responses to questions on his post-UN future have sent the rumor mill into a frenzy. The general consensus is that he could throw his hat into the ring. Touching down in Korea on Wednesday to join the Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity, Ban said Korea, as it stands today, is too divided. He added that political leaders should work to bring the people together with a president who is willing to abandon everything for national unity. Ban's actions and remarks are being carefully monitored by the ruling and opposition parties. The ruling Saenuri Party has expressed anticipation over his potential run next year, while opposition parties are less sure, saying it's inappropriate for Ban to involve himself in domestic political affairs while he is still at the helm of the UN. Meanwhile, political leaders are seeing Ban's possible bid for the presidency as a huge factor that could change the political landscape of the country.
We have not seen a strong ruling party candidate surfacing yet. Ban, who has solidified his reputation as the chief of the UN, could bring a positive influence to the Saenuri camp, which suffered a blow in the general election last month.
But there are concerns that his experience as UN chief may not be enough to understand and embrace domestic politics, raising the possibility that Ban running in the next year's presidential election may not be a winning game for the ruling Saenuri Party. Touching on the reaction to his remarks, however, Ban said during a breakfast meeting Thursday that the media should not stretch his words. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's Constitutional Court has dismissed a petition questioning the constitutionality of the so-called National Assembly Advancement Act. With the dismissal, the law remains valid. Kim Young-gil tells us more.
The National Assembly Advancement Act, which governs parliamentary affairs, has been criticized as the main reason for paralysis during the current 19th National Assembly. The law was amended in 2012 to allow for more dialogue and compromise among lawmakers. But a group of ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers disagreed, saying the revision goes against the Constitution and majority rule. They filed a petition with the court in January last year questioning the constitutionality of the revision, which requires that contentious bills gain the approval of more than 60% of lawmakers before they can be brought up for a vote. It also requires bipartisan agreement before a parliamentary speaker can use his or her authority to bring bills up for a vote. The act has made it possible for Parliament to avoid the kind of violence that once flared up during assembly sessions. However, it has also brought parliamentary activity to a standstill, as bills backed by the government and the ruling party, which previously held a 156-seat majority in the 300-member body, were often blocked by the opposition. In handing down its ruling, the court said it is important to respect the autonomy of the parliament. All three leading political parties say they respect the court's decision and have promised to make the parliament more productive when the 20th National Assembly begins its term next week. Kim Young-git, Arirang News.
We're seeing fresh highs again in Korea's household debt, despite government measures to slam the brakes on snowballing debt growth. What's worse is that efforts to limit debt levels are actually adding to the burden of low-income earners. Hwang Ji-hye has the latest.
Korea's household debt, including sales on credit, has hit yet another record high. The Bank of Korea says the amount stood at around 1,224 trillion won, or slightly over $1 trillion as of the end of the first quarter. That's the largest amount logged since related data was first run in 2002. For first quarter figures, the amount grew at the fastest pace on record, jumping roughly $17.5 billion from the end of last year, but the pace of growth slowed significantly compared to the fourth quarter. Experts say it's natural that debt gains weakened, as the amount that increased in the last 3 months of last year was overly excessive. The government had warned it would tighten guidelines on screening loan applicants, measures that kicked in this February, encouraging more people who were looking to borrow to turn to banks a lot earlier. What's more worrisome is that the quality of debt is worsening.
As banks tightened guidelines on mortgages, the debt pressure was transferred to the non-banking sector, especially among those with low incomes and low credit.
Of the $17.5 billion increase in the first quarter, over 2/3 of the loans came from the non-banking sector. And keeping those debt levels in check are considered crucial, as the interest rates are much higher, adding further to the existing debt pile. So economists say the greater concern for now is not the possibility of bad loans prompting a financial crisis, but the significant dent that soaring debt would put in already fragile household spending power. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's KF-X fighter jet will be equipped with an American-made engine. Korea Aerospace Industries announced Thursday that General Electric or GE was chosen as the preferred bidder over Eurojet Turbo GmbH. GE's F414 engine, which is also used in the U.S. Navy's Super Hornet, received favorable marks for technological ability and price. Korea opened the bidding in August of last year. The contract will be signed in June as soon as KAI and GE conclude negotiations. And that brings us to the end of this hour's newscast. As always, thank you for watching.